If you want to use Waybar, first you have to install a couple of packages. Waybar, of course, then fonts that Waybar uses. I don't remember which of these two fonts I installed to see those, let's say, signs in the Waybar, so I just put them both. Power control unit for the sound, NM connection editor and network manager applet unit for the network, of course, and power profiles daemon for one of the modules that Waybar uses. Once that is installed, you can just start Waybar by typing in Waybar. And first thing, you can see that it has a lot of errors. The most errors are with input, and as it says here, you should check if you are in input group. So I will just exit Waybar. And what I recommend when you are editing Waybar, you just start it from the terminal. You don't actually make it to start up with Hyprland or make a script for it to automatically restart, just so you can see which errors you are getting. And after everything is set up, then you can put it in the startup and make a restart script, whatever you want. So first thing, I'm gonna put my user to input group. You can do that by editing etc/group file, and for that you need sudo privileges. And in the input group, I'll just put in my user, save the file, and reboot my computer. After I rebooted my computer, now when I start Waybar, you can see that I have a lot less errors, and now we go to the next one. So by default, Waybar is configured for Sway, and here at the beginning it says where the configuration files are. You have one for configuration and the other one is for styling. Styling is how Waybar will actually look like. So first thing you want to do is create a Waybar folder in your .config folder, and then you can just copy these two files to that folder. And now you have your basic config files for your Waybar. The same thing you can do with going to the Waybar wiki page, and you can see that here it has a link to default config, and here you will find those two files, config JSON-C and style CSS. The thing you want to download also is under custom modules is media player py, and you can just go to download the raw file. And you do the same thing with Power Menu XML. And you just copy all the files to your .config Waybar folder. For this error, media stop unexpectedly, is it endless? You have to make mediaplayer.py an executable. So you can do this either through tuner or terminal, however you want. And now when you start your Waybar, that error is gone. So the next most repeated error is having something to do with Sway, and since I'm in Hyprland, of course it won't find Sway, and for that errors to disappear, you just have to replace Sway with Hyprland and then save the file. And now just it complains about some Hyprland stuff not existing, some modules. I don't know what this message means, and since I'm on desktop, I don't have any batteries, so I don't care about that. So this is how your default Waybar will look if you don't touch anything. So here you have a little power menu, then clock that on click shows the date, and the tooltip is just a little calendar, your keyboard, caps lock, is it on or off, memory, CPU, power profile, your IP, volume control. I think this is for activating idle and deactivating it, I'm not sure. The name of your window that is focused, and some workspaces. If this is enough for you and you like how it looks, then you are done. You don't have to watch video anymore. I don't like how it looks, so I will completely rearrange it the way I like it. The first thing I'm gonna do is to go to my Waybar folder and open config and style CSS files. Here at the beginning of the file you have some general settings, and then you have the layout of the modules and the modules configuration themselves. Since for me all this is just too messy, so I will divide this into files. In config JSON-C I will leave the general configuration, and I will create a new file called modules JSON-C. And then I will just copy all these modules and put them in the modules file. And here you have to watch on all the brackets. Every JSON file has to start with this bracket and end with 1. And the same thing for config file. And as you can see, after every bracket there is a comma, except there shouldn't be one after the last comma inside of those squirrely brackets. The same is for instance, when you list stuff, they all have comma at the end of the line except the last row. So be careful about that. Those are most common mistakes that I personally make. So now the config file is much smaller and I can actually see what it says. The first thing, you have a layer for the Waybar. That can be top or bottom, meaning if some window is opened over the bar, will it be shown over the bar or under the bar? The 2 slashes means that the line is commented, and I will just uncomment this and I will put the layer to be bottom because I want to see if something goes over what it says. Position, you can have it bottom, top, left, right. I will just put it at the top. Height is how thick your Waybar will be, and width is how big your Waybar will be. I will leave this as it is because I don't need it smaller. And spacing is how much space will be between modules. And here you have modules left, center and right, meaning modules that you put under the left will appear here, under center will be in the center, and this is the right side. I don't need any of these modules, so I will just delete them. Under center, I don't want Hyprland window. I will just put CPU and memory, and on the right, I don't need this one. I just need audio, network. I don't need power. I don't need this because I don't want to have a cluttered Waybar. I need a clock, tray and custom power button. And now if I start my Waybar again, you can see that is a lot cleaner, but I still don't like how it looks. If you go to configuration wiki page, you can see that for every single module there is a documentation. For instance, if I click on CPU, you can see all the options that you can put for that module, and there are also some examples on what you can put in your configuration. The same thing is for styling. You can go to this link and you will find here some example of config files, but also what you can define in the style file. Since this is mostly CSS and I don't know CSS, but it's pretty readable. You know, background is the background. You have borders, you have fonts, you have height, padding, margins. I don't even know. I never bother with styling. I always just copy somebody else's file and then delete the things that I don't need. Of course, there is a cat puccini theme for Waybar, but this time I will just take colors. And as you can see here under the Mocha CSS theme, you have defined some colors. And you put that colors in the style CSS file at the beginning of the file before everything. And the style CSS file starts with this star. And the first part that is defined is the actual look of the bar. So if I restart my Waybar now, you can see that it looks completely different. At the beginning, I put the fonts that I want for Waybar to use, style of the font and the size of the font. You can put multiple fonts, and if it doesn't find a character in that specific font family, it will look for it in the other. For instance, if in Ubuntu Nerd font there are some signs that are missing, it will go to Santarel fonts and look for the signs there, and so on. And here I defined the colors for the Waybar itself. And I use variables defined here from the cat puccini theme. And you can also define colors for every program that you want to be different from the default. And this is how you defined it. And basically all this stuff here is just CSS for every single element that you use in your Waybar. For instance, as you can see, I have different font color for every module that I have, and I just take the variable that I like. And since I don't have the options for which labels you can have, like for instance workspaces button selected, active and urgent, if I go here, for instance, you can see if I go over the mouse, the selected workspace turns to blue and the active is this purple one. And as I say, all the options for the styling of specific model you can just find at their wiki styling page. Now we come to the configuration of the modules itself. In order for config file to know that it has to read this module's JSON-C file, you have to add this line so it can be read when Waybar is started. Now if I restart my Waybar, you can right away see that there are these little pictures, and here is the power button, and this is all defined here. So here is a lot of junk that I really don't need. So first thing I'm gonna delete is this part. I don't have scratch pads. I don't know what mode is. I don't need keyboard state, and always beware of the brackets. I don't want to have a media player, so all this goes away. I don't need idle inhibitor. Tray I do need. Clock I definitely need, but I will just style it a little different. CPU is okay, but I don't need these pictures. I will just type in CPU so I know what it is, because these little pictures don't mean anything to me. By the way, speaking of the little pictures, the way you get them, you go to the Nerd Fonts page and then you go to cheat sheet. And for instance, you type in something you are searching for. I will, for instance, say CPU. And then when you find the picture you like, you just press here add a copy and then you paste it to your editor. And here tooltip is set to false, which means if you hover over the CPU module, there won't be any text shown. I will put this to true. And now when I go to CPU module, it will show me some tooltips. For instance, here the total CPU usage and the usage on course. The same for memory. I don't want this little sign. I will just put here RAM. If I go to the wiki under memory, you have here some examples of what you can use. And by the way, how I read this documentation is that I see what options that can be used, but for the right syntax, I just either go here under examples, or I, for instance, copy this specific total, type in the Google Waybar and paste specific total and see what other people wrote. I would never know that this is the syntax just reading this documentation. Maybe if somebody is programmer and this makes sense to them, okay, but to me it means nothing. I need an example and I will just copy paste what I need. So this is all I'm gonna change. And if I restart my Waybar, you can see that here is the percentage of my used RAM, and if I go over it, tooltip will show how much gigabytes is actually used. As you can see, I didn't have to put tooltip to be true because some things are set by default. You just have to go through documentation and see what is what. Next thing, I don't care about temperature. I'm not on a laptop, so I don't need the backlight. I don't have batteries. I don't need power profiles. I don't have custom media put in my config file. Now I'm left only with modules that I actually want to have. So first, audio. By default, for me, it only works for the speakers. It doesn't work for a microphone. And if I click on POW control, nothing happens. If I look at the terminal and see what error message I get, it's something about lost connection to Wayland compositor. I will deal with this later. So what I want to do is just to delete everything and just put this part, which I Frankensteined from various configuration files on the internet. And now if I save the file and restart the Waybar, you can see that I only have a speaker because this is the way I want it. And when I hover over it, it just shows me the percentage of the volume. If I scroll my mouse, if I go up, the volume will be louder, and if I scroll down, the volume will be quieter. And as you can see, when volume gets louder and louder, the icon changes. And this is defined here. First format, I want just to be icon, nothing else. If I mute the audio, this will be the icon. For everything else, icons will be these ones. Tooltip format, as I said previously, is just the percentage of the volume. If I click on that icon, it should mute the audio and the icon should change like this. And if I click again, audio is as it was before. On right click, again something with Wayland Compositor, but I cannot deal with this on this machine because I can't upgrade it, because if I upgrade Wayland to bigger version, then I won't be able to run it in the virtual machine. So this is all I need for my audio. Now for the network, I don't like this part either, so I will just change it again with some Frankenstein syntax that I picked up on the internet, and I will just have this icon whether I am on Ethernet or on Wi-Fi, and this will be the icon when the network is disconnected. Let me just restart my Waybar. Now that I restarted my Waybar, you can see that network is a lot nicer. Basically what I need from the network is to know whether I'm connected or not, and when I hover over it, it will show me the IP. That's all I need from the network in my bar. And you can see that here I have format Ethernet and format Wi-Fi, meaning these two icons can be different depending on how I'm connected. You also can put a different tooltip format depending on whether you are on Ethernet or Wi-Fi. For instance, I'm connected over Ethernet and it will just show that I'm connected to the IP address. And here I can just look up my IP very quickly. If I were connected to Wi-Fi, it will just tell me to which wireless network I'm connected. And then when I click the icon, it will run NM2E, which is a network manager. But if you had, for instance, wireless here, you could choose your wireless network from this menu, and then you just quit, and that's it. The reason why I have NM2E and not NM applet is so I could have this nice icon. So if I would run NM applet, it will show this icon, and on right click you of course have a much nicer menu than the NM2E, but you can't define this icon to be like the rest on the Waybar. So I just use NM2E. I don't use it that much anyway, so that's okay. But if you want, if this is more practical for you, you can put this in your Hyprland config file exec1, and it will automatically start when you start Hyprland. So the next thing is clock, which by the way looks fine just the way it is, but I want to add additional coloring to it. So if you go to the wiki page under clock, you have pretty much here all the examples that you need. So the calendar can be the full year or just 1 month as it is by default. And that part you define under calendar. So under clock you have two parts. You have the clock itself and then you have the calendar. By default syntax is like this. So basically it shows the clock, and if you click on it, it will show just the date, and tooltip will show the calendar. And when you left click again, it will just show the clock. Now I will change this with this formatting, and let me just restart my Waybar. And you see not much has changed. However, the tooltip is changed. And also when I click on it, it shows me the different format of the date. So what did I do here? First of all, I just want my clock just to show hours and minutes. Format alt is short for alternative, and that is when you press left click. And this is, so I have the day of the week, name of the month, day and year. You can put here whatever you want. Just go to wiki and search for what you like. And then on tooltip format, I put the calendar. But as you can see from the wiki, calendar can be defined in more detail. And that is what I did. So I put here mode as month, just in case I want to switch to year. I have here the syntax already waiting for me. This part I just copied. Also, week numbers position is on the right. So these are those numbers that you see: 48, 49, 50, 51, and so on. On scroll 1, if you look at the wiki, you should scroll months by one, backward or forward, but for some reason that doesn't work for me. No matter how I scroll, nothing happens. I don't know why. And then you can also color the calendar a little bit different. For instance, my month, that says Prosinac 2024 is one color, today is another color. So currently I don't know if you can see on the screen, it's green. I can't show you with the arrow because as soon as I remove mouse from the clock, the tooltip is gone. And then the number of the weeks are in different color. And I took all those colors from Cat Puccin team. And you can play with this how much as you want. For instance, if I put here the year and I restart my Waybar, now when I go to tooltip, it will show me the whole year with everything formatted just as it for a month. But I don't need the whole year, I just need a month, so I leave it like this. And the last thing that I put on my Waybar is the power button. So this is how it is set up by default. I just changed the path to that power menu XML that I downloaded at the beginning. Things here are pretty self-explanatory. So the button looks like this. On click I get a little menu, then that menu calls this file, and here are the actions that are defined in this power menu XML. And this is enough for me, I don't need more. But for instance, if you want a more fancier way to log out, you can just put tooltip format as PowerPC, and then on click start program W logout. And you can install the logout from AUR. And now when you restart your Waybar, when you click on that button, it will say PowerPC, and then you will get these fancy buttons for shutting down your PC, which of course you can additionally style with CSS, which I won't do in this video because I'm sick and tired of CSS and customizing every single letter or sign in Hyprland. But just so you know, it exists. And of course, when you are done configuring your Waybar, you can just put in your Hyprland conf file for Waybar to start the boot. And this is pretty much all I wanted to tell you about Waybar and how you can start with it. And as you can see, the same as with Hyprland config files, if you split Waybar configuration files to multiple files and clean all the junk, it looks much more readable and it looks much more easier to understand, at least for me. So I hope this helped you at least a little bit to show you how to start configuring your Waybar. This is it for now. And that's all.